you learn a lot working at an insurance company, you learn a lot working at an agency. I think I learned more outside of college than I did in college.
This is the Insurance Technology Podcast, where we bring interesting people from across the insurance ecosystem to discuss and debate technology's impact on the industry. Join us each episode for insights and best practices from industry stewards and tomorrow's innovators. Now, here's your host, Reid Holsworth.
Welcome to the Insurance Technology Podcast. I'm your host, Reid Holsworth. In this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Raghav Tanna. Raghav is the CEO and co-founder of Tarmika. Many of you guys out there know Tarmika and also know that Tarmika was just acquired by Applied Systems. I was heavily involved in that acquisition, and through these episodes, we're going to get into that. But in this first episode, we're going to get to know Raghav. We're going to get to know where he came from and how he came into this industry. And Raghav didn't just start as a startup looking for a problem within our industry. He came into our industry. He grew up in our industry. From his time at Travelers to at his dad's agency. So this guy really knows his stuff. It's really, really interesting, and we're going to get into the beginning. Stay tuned. It's awesome. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. It's cool. Not very many of these in-person ones that we've done in the past, so it's always nice to do that. It's kind of cool for all of us to be here.
I think we should have got something on video, wore our suits, looked real snazzy.
I know. We just kind of showed up.
Yeah.
Moved around, but I think it's going to work out good. So most everybody knows you from your current business now, Tarmika, which we'll get into. There's a lot to talk about there. But before we get into that, I always like to just learn about you. Like, where did you grow up? What did you like to do as a kid? Tell me a little bit about your parents. Give the listeners that little background on you and your life.
So I born and raised right outside of Boston, Massachusetts. My whole life I've lived there. And to be honest, I'll never leave. It's, my opinion, the greatest city in the world.
I love Boston. It's such a great town.
My parents actually, my dad he moved here in 77 from India. So he grew up in India, moved here in 77, and went right into insurance, which is kind of weird because who moves to the U.S. and the dream is I'm going to go work at an insurance company.
And you work for a company or an agency?
He worked for a company. So he worked for One Beacon, worked for AIG.
Oh, wow.
He's worked for a handful of them. So from 77 to 2000, he worked on the agencies, on the carrier side. 2000, he went and started an agency. Oh. So he's been in insurance for 40 years. But it's funny because he moved around. He went down to Hartford, Connecticut for a bit. He went down to, he went over to Michigan for a bit, but always in the insurance world. And that's kind of how I grew up. But I, pretty normal childhood, played a bunch of sports, played tennis, played soccer, started playing golf recently, 8 years ago. But yeah, I mean, my whole life has been surrounded around this concept of, everyone just goes into insurance or accounting. So my entire family is either in insurance or they're CPAs.
No kidding. So then how did you get into insurance? What was your first gig? So actually back up a little bit because your dad owned an agency.
Yeah.
And you recently sold it to Hub, right?
I sold to Hub, yeah.
So that's interesting. Love to hear a little about that. But how did he go from working for the companies to then starting his own agency?
So it's actually funny. So I guess this entrepreneurial bug runs in the family. 2000, I think he had three kids at the time. I was 7, so I was the youngest.
Oh, wow.
And he somehow, some way decided hey, I hate working for people. I'm going to go start my own agency. And that first year, he always tells me the story how he made $7,000. I was I don't know if I'm actually going to afford to take care of these kids anymore. But he just left the company side, just took the risk and said, I want to go do this on my own now. And that was ultimately what happened. And he went and started the agency. He ran it as a part of another agency for about 9 years. And then he went completely on his own in 2010.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always joke about the risk of starting a company, but that his risk was legit. Mm-hmm. When I took a risk, I had no kids. I was 25. It's a completely different ballgame at that point.
Oh, yeah. Huge. Yeah. Totally different. You don't have all those big responsibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a kid now. So
I have a kid now.
You feel it.
Now I feel it. If I were to do that today, though,
yeah,
I don't necessarily know if I would have.
Sure.
I don't know if I could go back and say, yeah, I have a 1-year-old who needs all of these things, and I can just go start a company and give up my salary for as many years as it did, right? 2 years without a salary, 2.5 years. I don't know if I can do that again.
It's tough, man. It's tough, and it takes a lot out of you too for your family life.
Oh yeah, you see these grays? These grays don't come from nothing. It's all stress.
So how did you get into insurance?
So when I graduated college, I went and worked on the finance side of Travelers for a bit. And I don't really know why I chose Travelers, but when I was applying for jobs, I didn't really want to go into accounting. Rest of the family was in accounting.
Where'd you go to school for?
Finance.
Oh, okay.
So that's my background too, but I didn't really want to go into accounting. I didn't want to go work for the big four CPA firms, right? Big four accounting firms. And my dad seemed to make a pretty good career out of insurance. So I said, hey, Travelers seems like a better spot than anywhere to go. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I went and worked at Travelers. And over the course of those 3 years, I figured out what my lane was and ventured off into the entrepreneurial world. But really, like, it just fell in my lap. It was the job offer I got. I got a couple other ones, but Travelers was comfortable because my dad was in insurance.
That's awesome. Good company to work for.
It is. Learned a lot doing it too, right? Like, you learn a lot working at an insurance company. You learn a lot working at an agency. Yeah. And I think I learned more outside of college than I did in college. So those 3 years before starting this company, I feel like I learned more in those 3 years than I ever would have in the 4 years I went to school.
Yeah, totally. Isn't that true to life?
Yeah.
You know?
If I could go back, I'd take that money back and just, invest it into Tarmika. That would have been better.
Yeah, you did all right. I think you did okay.
I did okay. It worked out for me.
So then, all right. So then you work for Travelers. Then what?
So after Travelers, I came up with this concept of a commercial lines rating platform, but I didn't know the agency side at all. And my dad told me, he's like, hey, if you want to go build something and sell it to agencies, you better know the agency side.
So when you're at Travelers, you're like, hey, how come nobody's rating this type of stuff?
Well,
like
every agency I talked to would be like, hey, why aren't you submitting to us? All of the agencies that I talked to, why aren't you submitting to Travelers? And say, well, we already submitted to Hartford, we already submitted to Liberty, they already gave us a good quote. Why would we submit to Travelers too? I was like, there has to be a way just to submit to everybody at once, right? And there wasn't. I mean, there was, but there wasn't a good one.
Yeah.
And over time, even once I started the company, I realized that there was 3 or 4 out there, but our focus was dead set on the agency experience and how we can make it as efficient for them as possible. How do we make the agency experience the best? And just kept going with that model.
Yeah, because there has been a lot of commercial lines radar over the years. I thought like CPAS, which then turned into Bolt, was like the first one. No, there was ones before that. Way before that. There's been a bunch out there. But I will say none that have been super successful, right? In doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I would say there's all these companies that ventured into commercial rating, but they had other focuses.
Yes.
And they made a lot of money on those other focuses, but no one actually made money on commercial rating.
Yeah.
And our niche was commercial rating. We're going to focus 100% of our efforts on just driving adoption of commercial rating. So very different. I mean, there's companies all over the place that probably had a plan for a commercial rater, had a plan to build out their solutions, and then we're like, hey, there's a revenue model elsewhere. Let's go take that on instead.
Yeah, totally.
And we never did that. We just focused on this.
Yeah, that has happened for the majority of the ones that have been successful. That was what it was from.
Yeah.
It's not the revenue generated from the agencies and the users of using the actual product itself.
I don't even think we were one of the first 25 commercial raters out there.
Really? You think that high? Huh?
I mean, there's been a lot.
There has been a lot. I wouldn't think 25.
Maybe not 25, but there's been so many, and there's so many that were in stealth and then went out of business. And there's so many that became agencies and they just sold direct to consumer as a commercial rater to customers. But there's been a lot.
Yeah. So okay. 2 years, so you went to the agency, Dad's agency. You did that. What'd you do at the agency, Dad's agency?
Sold commercial insurance.
No kidding.
Sold commercial insurance, and I
small commercial. Whatever you could get.
Everything I could get. My focus was staffing companies, so I sold a lot of staffing companies.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So average premium size in the staffing company accounts for like 25 to 30,000.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fit in a little white box. So I'd submit these to all these carriers, nothing would ever work. But that's what I did. I sold commercial insurance. I flew all over the place to meet with clients, went to staffing conferences, went to everything I could. Pretty much any client I could get my hands on in small commercial, I was signing. Huh. That was the goal. My goal was in the 2 years to write over $3 million in premium.
Did you do it?
I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Now, one of the clients actually, and my dad will hear this and he'll laugh. One of the clients that I signed has increased their premium by like 100,000. He's got an earn-out to hit, so that's just going to him. I mean, I think I should get paid out on
that. tell your pops he owes you.
And this is public now, so he should know. He needs to know.
That's pretty funny. So that's pretty cool. So you were actually like doing the work. Like, so I didn't realize that you were selling commercial insurance. You had this idea. You're like, hey, I want to go work with you, Pops, and show me the biz. And so you did, and you did that. You probably wrote a lot of freaking applications. You did a lot of manual labor, if you will, dealing with all of that. What system did you guys use there?
AMS system?
Yeah.
So we used AMS 360, then we switched over to Partner XC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we now he's on Epic with Hub, but we were using that AMS system, and honestly, the AMS component of it I was horrible at, like putting in notes.
Yeah, totally.
Doing all that stuff I was terrible at, but quoting accounts I got pretty fast at it, and even then, even doing that for 10 carriers, I was like, all right, this is still taking me an hour per client, and this should take 10 minutes.
It's crazy.
It was nuts, but again, I was super comfortable there.
So did you have your favorites? Like, say there's 10 companies, right? You had your favorite stuff. Like, you probably only submitted to like 3.
3 every time. Same 3.
Same 3.
Travelers, Hartford, Liberty, every single time.
That's funny.
And then over time,
who was first? Who would you go to first?
Travelers.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I knew their system. I worked there.
Oh, okay.
It was so easy. I knew it well. So
yeah.
There was also Norfolk and Dedham was a regional that I go to every time for any retail account.
Okay.
And they wrote it like that, and that was because of a relationship with the underwriter, though.
Huh.
Yeah. I was in the weeds. I was right in the business.
In the weeds.
Yeah.
So then, how did you transition from that into starting Tarmika?
So I still think that maybe not the best decision because I was writing a lot of premium, and I was like, these paychecks are pretty good. These commission checks are pretty solid. So to give that up was hard.
Yeah.
But I always thought, I'm 25. When else can I take this risk? When else can I just go start something? Yeah, right?
Jesus.
So
yeah. You're what, 29 now?
I'm 29 now.
Yeah.
When else can you take that risk, though?
Yeah.
So my dad introduced me to a tech company in Boston who ran these conferences all the time. And at one of those conferences, I met my co-founder, Geetha.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, do you know engineers? Because this is what I want to go build. And fortunately, she did. And we went out and we just started doing it. We're like, you know what? This is the concept. I started writing requirements. I started mapping underwriting questions. I just did everything I could to learn everything about building a software company, which at the time was not very much. There's a lot of YouTube videos, learn how to code on YouTube.
That's
all
awesome.
of that stuff. But that's how we did it. We started it in 2018, and first 9 months, we're just building out the first version of the product, and it was horrible. We released that first version, and if you saw it now, you'd be like, that is a bad product.
So who was the first user? Your dad?
No, actually, my dad tested it, but the first user was Mark Duffy.
Okay.
He owns an agency right outside of Boston, and I went to him. I met him at a golf event. And I went to him and I was like, "This is the concept I'm building." He's like, "I'll help you." And just as a favor, he just started quoting in the system.
Oh, nice.
He just started testing. He would tell us everything that was wrong with it. He would tell us everything he liked about it, everything he hated about it.
So so you build the product, get all that, but you had to have like no markets. Like
no markets. Nothing. Norfolk and Dedham, Arbella and Hanover.
Yeah, you can do some work with those though. I mean, yeah.
We landed 10 agencies with those 3 carriers.
Wow. Did any of the carriers help you on the path?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's
they help her like promote you to other agents. Like, hey, Raghav's doing this thing. We think it's pretty cool. Like, you should go check it out.
So they did, and then there was my dad was part of a network. It's called NAIA.
Okay.
And there's 2 people there. The two owners of NAIA are the 2 people that run it. They had me up there to their office, and they let me speak in front of all 90 agencies.
Oh wow.
And they had seen the product, and they were like, yeah, this isn't where it needs to be, but we believe in the vision. We think this is cool. We'll let you talk to everybody. I picked up like 5 or 6 agencies from that. And then right after that event, we hired Chris Lane. And that's when things took off. He started going after carriers, started going after agencies. And from that point in 2019 to the end of 2019, I think we onboarded like 60 or 70 agencies, some for free, some paid. He picked up 6 or 7 carriers. And the end of 2019, we're like, this is a legit company now.
Yeah.
We can actually go sell this now. So we started selling to agencies and carriers.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So were those agencies that you picked up in the beginning, were they paying you or just kind of using it?
I think at the end of 2019, we had 40 paying customers and 60 non-paying customers.
Are any of them still not paying?
There's one agency. So now over 1,000 agencies, 6,000 users. And I think we have one agency who doesn't pay. And you can guess who it is.
I'm not going to guess.
It's my dad.
Oh, okay.
There's one agency that doesn't pay us. And I've asked. I've sent him contracts. He won't sign them.
Oh, that's
He
hilarious.
refuses.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
He doesn't like spending money either.
That's awesome, man. So that's pretty cool. So how did it go? Like, how was that though? I mean, it's the biggest problem, as everybody knows, with these commercial lines comparative raters. I mean, comparative raters in general is the markets, and it's the chicken and the egg thing and all of that. And so, at what point did you feel like, okay, now we have enough markets? Or do you even feel like you do now?
I don't think you ever have enough markets because every agency wants something different.
Yeah.
Every agency we talk to wants like a random carrier that we haven't even heard of, and we have to go talk to that carrier. I think that doesn't change over time, no matter how many you have. But there was a shift. So it was a huge breaking point for us. And it was when Nationwide came on. When Nationwide came on, they really pushed us out to their agencies.
Oh, okay.
They were huge advocates of ours. They were huge partners.
And was that right around the time when they were going really independent, basically?
Yeah. Right around the same time.
Yeah.
And they had other partnerships. I think they had other relationships with other rating platforms, but we just built a good bond with them, built a good relationship, and it helped us scale. But that they were the breaking point. As soon as they came on, we felt like agencies started to fall.
Yeah.
And then we went from 60 non-paying customers to 300 paying customers, then 400, then 500, just kept ramping. But it was interesting to see which carriers drove the most adoption, because each carrier impacted us in such a way that we started increasing our sales due to them coming on. So I said this to every carrier: we always needed carriers more than they needed us. And finally, it got to a point where carriers were like, no, we need you guys as well now, because we have enough volume through this platform where we actually value the relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was cool.
That's awesome. Did you so you said earlier that the advice that your dad gave you on the business was run your company, run your startup as if it was your money.
Yeah.
So that implies that you raised money throughout this.
We did. We raised a small amount twice.
Okay.
And I always wanted to. So again, as you know, and most people don't know, is I'm extremely cheap with everything. But I ran our business where I wanted our employees to be the ones that benefited from an exit from anything. I wanted our investors to make sure that they saw a good return, but I didn't want to raise so much money that I was answering to other people all the time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point of starting your own company?
Totally diluted.
And so we raised a small amount, and our focus really was, we had 16 employees in the U.S. and 24 in India at a business that was honestly probably should have had double that. And we just didn't want to hire. We just didn't want to hire more people. We didn't want to fundraise more. And we wanted to make sure that, hey, if we continue to run this business, even if we're never acquired, we want to be profitable.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we get to profitability. That was the goal. It wasn't to exit. It wasn't to make a ton of money. It was to be profitable, make sure we run a sustainable business. So that's why he probably told me to do that. And probably because he invested some money and he didn't want to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was those two things. But we accomplished that. But as a startup, you're always going to spend more than you make. You just want to keep growing, right?
Yeah, you need growth. You need to drive revenue.
So we of course did that.
Burning, it's okay.
We of course did that, but there was a path to profitability.
Yeah,
we knew where we were going.
Yeah, isn't that nice though to know that you can pivot if you need to and then become profitable?
Exactly.
Quickly. Yeah.
I think that's the change in the market, right? We went from everyone raising hundreds of millions of dollars and not caring about profitability. Now every investor cares about you becoming profitable at some point.
Raghav Tanna, folks. What a great dude. I really love his style, as a lot of you know, on the whole bootstrap as long as you possibly can. That's how you get to the big exit. That's how you make the big dollars, folks. You really do. Hey, you can hate me for it, but that's truly what I believe. And Raghav ran a smart business. I mean, taking it from 0 to 6,000 users in a few years, that's insane. For those of you that are listening to this out there, you know how hard it is to break into this industry in that way. He really grew a really, really great business in a very short amount of time. And I intimately know his entire team, and these are really good people. He's built an awesome team, and there's something to be said about that. That's how you win. That's part of the secret sauce, is building that team. Now, in this next episode, we're going to get into much more. We're going to get into his now new life at Applied, and once again, what that looks like to get acquired by Applied Systems. So some good stuff there. And then him and I are going to riff on the future of insurance technology. You know, as him being 29 years old, he's got a lot of insights on what the future looks like. So stay tuned. It's going to be awesome.